During the season of Lent each year, we're asked to take stock of how we feel about ourselves and our relationships. It is a time of reflection and introspection, and I think we tend to interpret this time as a rather personal one. How dependent am I on the things I don't really need but want anyway? How is the temperature of my generosity and kindness to others? Should I perhaps be more understanding and forgiving to those with whom I always seem to be disagreeing? Clearly their fault, but maybe I could be a little more accommodating. Maybe a little resolution to listen more and speak less. Yes, that's definitely something that Lenten reflection suggests to me. The psychologists say that sentences with I words are healthy, and I'm sure they're right. But sentences with we words are also healthy and a little closer to the gospel imperative, I think. We all live in cells of one size or another called communities, and if we are to explode any concept of being safely encased in one, immune from either danger or responsibility, the state of the world right now must surely illustrate that this is not right. Lenten introspection is good and helpful, but the gospel calls us to a broader vision, actually an infinitely broad one. The people of the Ukraine are experiencing a disaster of unimaginable proportions. The world is sharing the experience of their disaster at a distance, but with an unprecedented level of fraternal affection and support. In the shared sense of suffering and the determination that life go on, we want to help fan even the tiniest embers of hope. Haiti, our not too distant neighbour, also knows about disasters, but natural ones. For them also, everything needs to be rebuilt. Christian communities, no matter how small, are part of the greater whole, and each Christian is a stitch in the great tapestry that we call the church and its work, without which the picture cannot be considered complete. That tapestry, of course, is a work of art that includes all the churches and individuals belonging to them that make up the worldwide Christian family. In my former job, I traveled widely around the Anglican Communion and to Christian denominations of many kinds. In Ethiopia, the church is so ancient and different that it was impossible for me to understand what was going on until the day I was invited to a baptism. What a revelation! I could follow everything. The ecumenical patriarch is spiritual head of 300 million Orthodox Christians. A white-bearded and elderly man, he seems the epitome of all that is ancient and outmoded. But no, he is an informed, outspoken, and tireless advocate for the environment, exerting huge influence over a good proportion of the world's population. He preaches both action and hope, and exudes it as well. So, there is a real tension between the personal practice of a Holy Lent and the emotional and practical implications of being involved in and in responding to the situations of those in desperate need. And we do not all see everything through the same lens. Something of the tension between a philosophy of overt participation and extravagant generosity on the one hand, and parsimony and self-interest on the other, can be seen in the Gospel reading today. We have not been reading from the Gospel of John lately, so we have not heard the preamble to this reading. It helps to know that Lazarus has very recently been raised from the dead by Jesus. This is the sign that brings many to believe in him, many to flock to him, and at the same time leads others to start plotting his death. Some poignant symbolism is present too. Jesus mentions his burial, signifying that the end is close at hand. Yet Lazarus is sitting at the table, confirming that death does not speak the final word. Mary's perfume contrasts with the ugly smell of Lazarus' tomb. Some of you may remember the King James version of the Bible recounting the moment when Jesus asks that Lazarus' tomb be opened. Mary says, "Lord, by now he stinketh." Throughout this reading, we sense that wholeness and corruption, life and death, are being contrasted. Judas's motives are revealed to be corrupt rather than just frugal. He makes us think about money managers in recent times who have made the news. He conceals his real motives behind a veil of apparent common sense. Mary, on the other hand, is not only generous, but also wildly extravagant. Her expenditure was about that of the yearly wage for a labourer, huge by any reckoning, and considers how she delivers her gift. How can we think about this event without raising an eyebrow? There is an unavoidably erotic element, a moment of intimacy that unsettles us at the vision of her gentle touch and her wiping of Jesus' feet with her hair. A commentator on the Gospel of John has suggested that the vitality and the vividly sensuous nature of this story invites us to think about the Gospel in ways beyond words and speaking and reading. A way to do this is to allow the imagination, or perhaps some past experience, to allow the sense of smell to carry our reflection to another dimension. If Judas was offended, then the others present would have been engulfed by the strong and permeating aroma of the nard, as it is called. It would suffuse the whole room, the whole house probably. It is very strong because it is used to anoint the body in death. Helen Keller said, "Smell is a potent wizard that transports us across thousands of miles and all the years we have lived." Diane Ackerman says that nothing is more memorable than a smell, adding that we are actually able to detect over 10,000 kinds of odours. In The Hound of the Baskervilles, Sherlock Holmes identifies a woman by the smell of her notepaper. Smell is the most direct of all our senses, and Bill Bryson explores it deeply in his engaging new anthology called The Body, A Guide for Occupants. It's the sense that secures a place in our memories that forever allows us to link a smell with a place, an odour with an event, a scent with a person. Smells can charm us, excite us, calm us, even frighten us. I will never forget the way New York City smelled for months after the September 11, 2001 attacks. Once in a while, something like it will transport me instantly back to that day. It is the connection to the wider world that interests me, however. Jesus would have carried around that scent, that extravagance with the double meaning, for days. It may have yet lingered when he was standing in Pilate's court. But it is what he says that draws us back from the brink of disapproval, whether it is the disapproval at Mary's extravagance or of her seemingly inappropriate intimacy. He uses the moment to remind us of his imminent death, and to remind them also that he is about to die, and while he does, the poor yet remain. Here and during Lent, we open our service with a short quotation from Ephesians, which goes in part, "Walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." Not all the Bible translations include the word fragrant, and in fact it does not appear in the original Greek for some reason. A few years ago, I heard the first performance of a piece for organ and choir called "The Fragrance of Christ." I was not attracted to the title, but I was captivated by the music and the words. And I think about it often, especially when I'm struggling to both articulate and understand some terrible thing that has happened in the world. I try to imagine that the fragrance of Christ overcomes the tragedy with its permeating presence, that it heartens and encourages with its reassuring sweetness, that it represents hope by infusing itself into wood and fabric, into the very fabric of that tapestry of which we, each and every one, is a part. Next week we start the observance of Holy Week and prepare for the good news of the resurrection on Easter Day. It is an intense week if we walk the way of the cross with Jesus to its bitter conclusion. Good news seems a very remote possibility. Yet there is that scent that millions of others around the world have never forgotten. Mary's gift continues to saturate the heart and mind, sustaining us until the moment when we, holding our noses, look into the tomb, only to discover it empty, the fragrance of Christ lingering in the air.